City, November 1966, including the entire Twin City area.
The town meeting invites you to consider the theme, the care of the city. The bells that ring are not the ones that rang in old colonial New England, where the citizens gathered in the church or the school each year to discuss the problems that confronted them. The problems that face us in today's city are much more complex, and the groups that are being gathered in this new form of the town meeting represent the many diverse professions, ethnic and economic and religious groups who are seeking in this experiment to share together their concerns for the city. Educators, workers, clergy, businessmen, housewives, youth, the retired, the unemployed, the rich, and the poor are summoned by the bell of the town meeting to talk about the question, who cares about the city?
Talk about equality. But how can there possibly be equality when we can't even talk together?
Who cares about the city? Everybody talks about it, but who cares about our city? In our time, we have seen towns explode into metropolitan centers of frantic activity. Most of the population in America has clustered around these urban centers, while goods and services have adopted, for better or worse, the needs of its people. And so it has been in Minneapolis and St. Paul and the surrounding communities. Our city is limited in space, limited in resources, but it continues to grow. It pushes its way into suburbs and overflows into neighboring towns. But this growth has not come without a price, and the price is high. Our city is strangling at its center. Rapid expansion has paralyzed the core of the city. City budgets are strained. Pollution, crime, poverty, and congestion breed unrest and tension. Who cares about our city? To care for our city is to be concerned with the people who live here. For the city is people. The city is people. People who are troubled by the question of the city's problems. But how can these people talk to one another about the problems of the city? Their problems. In earlier days, people aired their concerns at the town meeting. Citizens would gather with their neighbors and the town officials to discuss their concerns and their fears. Today, however, the great masses of people have made this town meeting approach difficult, if not impossible. Many people have never met their neighbors. People work and play in areas away from their homes. Families move at an unprecedented rate, pulling up roots and starting all over again. The streets of our city are familiar, but the faces are not. For many, meaningful conversation is rare. Lonely people grasp for anyone who will listen, take time to understand, and even for a few minutes to care. But who is interested enough to care for our city and its people? Many civic and religious organizations are showing an increasing concern about the city. But the task of understanding each other and responsible action requires communication between people, lots of people.
The question of who cares about the city is not as simple to answer as in ancient times. Then the cities were the result of decisions and actions of emperors, kings, nobility, the landed aristocracy, the Bonaparte who built Paris, the Medicis who built Florence, the emperors that built the glory of Greece and Rome. In the modern American city, those who are responsible are not one single group, but many different groups. And among them are those in industry and labor, whose great technological developments and industries have shaped the modern city. Let us listen to men from labor and industry, from our community, discuss the question of who is the patron, who is responsible for our city.
Used to have this many times. Sure, this is going right now.
Well, one of the things that we've been talking about here, Twin Cities are different from a lot of other places. In Detroit or Cleveland or Pittsburgh, there are one or two people who are in a position to move all the muscle. If you get, it used to be said, if you got Mr. Mellon and Mr. Lawrence in Pittsburgh, that was the end of the ball game, and that isn't true so much around here, don't you think?
No, not in this community. One of the things that has been said that we have to have a community spirit. We have to get so many people into the to the act because we don't have the Mellons of Pittsburgh. We don't have the auto industry of Detroit. We don't have the railroads of Philadelphia, where we have these patrons come out and in one swoop they can do this, that, and the other thing. So we've got to have the broad community support of business, of labor, of just about every social group that we've got in the city.
I think, Dave, one thing, though, we do have that to a degree up on the Iron Range, where we have the one industry controlling the entire city, and then they decide what the school books or what the school board is going to do. It's a one industry and one union, you can say thing too, but we don't have that in the metropolitan area. We're more mixed up in the metropolitan area, more groups involved.
Don't you think that the tone of the businessman, business executive, and business industry as it is changing from the laissez-faire type of idea that the businessman, speaking as a businessman, thinks about his responsibility to the community, to the people he's involved with. I think that the businessman feels he's a doer of society, and it's his job to provide goods and services for more people, and how he directs them, and he has to develop his moral sensitivity to people.
I wonder whether it's really very helpful to get too sociological about this. Dave Rowe's a labor leader. I guess I'm a banker. At least I was when I left today. And we don't really get classified, though, too much, in the sense that all of us, all four of us, are doing a lot of things that don't relate directly to our jobs. We happen to be people in a community, and we work on plenty of things that break out of the narrow categories. Labor and business are categories. The four of us are people. And I guess the question is, who's interested in the city? We're interested in the city, along with a lot of other people. And this kind of sensitivity to the needs of the community is just true of decent people, whatever they do for a living. One of the things I'd sort of like to get your slant on, don't you think? Occasionally you get pretty frustrated because there are so many people you have to get going on something when you're interested in something. You can't just call for 3 or 4 people and get the job done.
No, it's not quite that simple. It's hard to get people interested in doing something to improve the city or help. But I'm always impressed with when I meet on these various committees, to find the people who do attend and are concerned about problems. For example, I'm on a juvenile delinquency and crime prevention committee. And yet here business people and labor people are sitting down trying to improve the prison system, trying to make it a better thing so we can turn these people out and get them jobs. And this has always impressed me that they take the time to do this. I think it's very important.
Don't you think that the businessman should do this thing? Also, wouldn't he have the wearing two hats, for example? As a private citizen, he's interested in the community and interested in the welfare of the community, and I think as a private citizen, he'd want to see that a good community so that people can grow up, grow old gracefully, if you want to have that, and so they don't have all of the problems and the pressures that we seem to be thinking about and were demonstrated in the film here. I think that the businessman has the object to become take his position as a vocation. I think that he should primarily think about his own business, though, to see where it fits into the community, that his business does a good job.
Well, I think we've got the community is made up of many small and large lobbying groups. And each one of them, I presume, in his own way, is doing what he thinks is best for the city. We've got those that might be small, some of them could be large, that say, let's go slow. We have others that say, we're not moving fast enough. It's a funny thing. We sit down, if I could use this as an example, our Capital Long Range Improvement Committee in the city of Minneapolis, made up of business people, of labor people, of citizens, of politicians. And when we sit down, and for the most part, when the information leaves from what we do, it's click. It's the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee. It isn't business. It isn't labor. It isn't one particular group. It's all of the groups. And many times the suggestions that come out are, for the most part, are constructive, and then it's up to the rest of the community to say, this is what we want. We approve this. We can go along with this, and giving everybody a chance, even the little guy, an opportunity to come up and say, not that he wants to be an obstructionist, that you're moving too fast. Point in question, I think, is the Riverside area.
Yes. Or you're moving too slow. A good point is the Selby Dale situation in St. Paul.
Sure.
There are all kinds of people who are making protests. One thing here, I guess we've all had the experience of people coming up and saying, oh, what can I do? I'm so small and so unimportant. How do I get into this? There's an increasing weakness, it seems to me, in the way that a lot of us are encouraged by analysis to look at the power structure of a community. You assume that it is a concentrated thing where a few people way up there or out there are doing everything. If you think about those people over in St. Anthony Park that wanted to stop a throughway access, they certainly got the job done. All they had to do is want to enough. We do tend to get feeling powerless, or many people do, and figure that there's somebody there that's got the muscle and we don't. I suppose many people fall into this, and maybe one of the things that we ought to stress is the importance of a concentrated and focused interest, even though by a limited number of people. If you want something enough and find other people who want it too, you can generally get something done about it, don't you think, Dave?
Oh, I think this is true, but you have to get everybody to participate.
Yeah.
I think we've proven that when one segment or just a couple of segments of our society attempt on a venture, they're not nearly as successful if all points of views are expressed and everybody has a voice and can express themselves fully. Then we start to make progress.
Except technological advancement. What about the airplane? I don't think there were too many people that agreed with Wilbur Wright maybe trying to get off the ground. They've been doing that for years. But here's an idea that was put into play, and all of a sudden industry developed this, and it was a good item, and it's been beneficial for us, and it's helped us.
Speaking here, not so much about innovation, but there are problems in any community. Who's going to solve it? Everybody's talking about what are they going to do about it? Who's they? It's a lot more people than most people think it is, don't
I think our real problem is it's difficult to get enough people to realize it's their problem. That a slum area, if I live in a nice neighborhood and it's a slum area, I feel, well, if the other guy keeps the dandelions out of his yard, I'm happy. If he keeps up his property, my property, nice. But we can't allow the slum to continue and think that it isn't going to affect my property. It's bound to get at me. I have to go through that area sometime. I'd like to be able to walk through that thing that one could hit on the head. So I want those people all happy too. So we are concerned, but it's hard to get everybody thinking along those lines. They figure that's not my problem.
Don't you think we're doing a lot better job? Now, maybe we shouldn't pat ourselves on the back, but we've had some awfully good examples around these communities of working together to get fairly difficult things done. I know that there wouldn't be any Guthrie Theater if labor hadn't pitched in at the time that they were desperately needed. And in St. Paul, we've been trying on the Metropolitan Improvements Committee to find parallel interests and to get some things accomplished. We've got a long way to go, but is there not some change of point of view here in the last, let's say, 10 or 15 years about the degree of common interest? If we've got labor and management represented here, aren't we finding more parallelisms than we would have, let's say, 20 years ago?
Oh, I don't think there's any question about this. And the committee that you mentioned, the one that I mentioned earlier on capital improvements, I think is the best example of that. We probably made more progress in the last 15 years in the metropolitan area of the cities than we've made. I don't know how far back you want to go, because there the concept was that labor wished to go in this direction, business wished to go in this direction, the politician wished to go in his own direction, and everybody pulling their own way. And they found out this just doesn't work. When we all pull together, why we make the progress.
We still scrap.
Oh, we still this is part of the this is the nature of the beast, I presume. And when the time comes when we don't scrap, maybe then we're going to be in trouble, because this is one way, I guess, that we get to express our views. When I think of what we've done, attempting to look at the city, for example, urban renewal, our redevelopment projects, the progress we've made on expressways, our streets, what we've done with our parks, what we've done with vocational schools, the Guthrie Theater. You mentioned it. It's a cultural thing. It's an economic thing. It's just a broad base that we have, and now that we have a broad base, we're thinking more broadly than we were.
Let's lob up that question for a second. Is it because we're so prosperous that we can afford to get along with each other?
That's a good point. Who's initiating all of these projects? If we didn't have many jobs, if we didn't have thriving industry, and weren't able to do this, I don't think the cooperative ventures would be as cooperative as they may seem right now. Let's look at the Twin City area, for example. Aren't we in a kind of a fine spot that appears to be a good business climate, a good labor climate, good raw materials, good cultural climate? We've got an educational institution, the University of Minnesota, great. You look at all of the advantages that we have, and maybe because of this prosperity of goods, labor, services, etc., we're in a good position, and that's why we're getting along and doing such a fine job. Which one came first?
I don't know which one came first, but I think it's something when it's a mutual benefit. I'm thinking, quite frankly, of the flood wall down in South St. Paul, where we used to have to fight the floods all the time, and many times we didn't know if the plant was going to go down the river. Well, putting in the flood wall certainly helped the company, didn't it? Sure. And then it also helped labor because we had our jobs, and we had to bring in the politicians, Dave, in order to get the flood wall tax money to build the flood wall. So I think it's just strictly a mutual benefit for all of us.
But it took the flood to build the flood wall.
Right.
And I think that what's happened in the American city, it's taken some real outbursts, some real crises to awaken perhaps a larger percentage of the citizenry to some concern. I'm not sure that prosperity itself is that easy on us. That is, I can see ourselves lulled into a sense of security when underneath the surface of prosperity there are many very difficult problems. And perhaps to overcome the so-called apathy of rank and file of citizens, which is probably one of the great problems, I think, facing us, it appears to me that it's taken a real shock, a shaking of the foundations, to get the involvement of the cross-section of our citizenry.
I think this is this is true. This goes back a little bit to what you what you had mentioned, and it took some time before business and labor got it through their heads that there was more to collective bargaining than just getting good wages and conditions for our people and for the employer just to get a good price for his product. And when the contract ran for 3 years, we forgot it and let it sit. But we're all parts of this community, and we finally come to the realization that, for goodness sakes, for us to continue with the high wages and for the employer to continue to get his product and for the employer to get a good price for it, we have to have a healthy community.
Sure we do, and we got to recognize on the management side that labor, that anybody needs to have some self-respect and to feel that he is respected. This may be going back to your original point.
Yes, I would suggest that business managers or business executives as such may be technically competent in their sphere, and they leave their educational area, go into their business, and their education sometimes stops, and they probably are not morally competent so that they can go out and do a better job, and maybe a continuing education along that line would be important, so that a manager or an executive should be technically and morally competent all the time so that he can perform his job better for the community, and I think then he will recognize his social and moral responsibility.
You know, we talked about the explosion, the shaking of the foundations. Everybody, it isn't just the society that needs this. Each individual has to confront certain sets of problems or crises before he gets morally responsible. It doesn't just happen once. It happens all the time. Maybe this is one of the things that in this community, as we are reasonably prosperous on a kind of a statistical average, there are plenty of people that aren't. And we all know that. You were speaking about that. We've got a big job to do. Maybe it takes a rock at the head of the community to remind us of that.
Well, I just wonder if our prosperity isn't what's creating the problem. The fact that we are prosperous, we're making good wages, we're making good profits. Other people who are, you might call the have-nots, get very aware of this, and you can understand the discontent and more discontent. I guess it was back in the Depression we said it wasn't bad being poor because you had so much company. You know, who cared? But you see, now we don't have that. Now people want something better, and they know it's there, and they're demanding it.
There are some of these who are saying that labor has become itself so middle class that its approach is very, very similar to that now of business. And there is another group that is not sufficiently represented in the councils of power and the shaping of the city. And those that are the poor and the so-called underprivileged who are not participating in this. How do you respond to this? That maybe labor, let's say, no longer really speaks on behalf of the disadvantaged, but in a sense has become part of the advantaged group in society.
Well, maybe it's a little bit of both. But if you go back and you look what's happened in the Twin City area, for example, where labor has played a very important part in renewal areas, where it's played a very, very important part in getting homes for the aged, for example. And I guess when you look at this brings up another problem. We found ourselves maybe in some areas doing just a little bit of a disservice and not looking a little bit further ahead. Maybe we place so much emphasis on the disadvantage to the point where we want to come in there and have a complete renewal or redevelopment area without looking ahead so that we find a decent place, the right decent place for these people to go. Statistics show today that from 1950 to 1960, Minneapolis, for example, lost about 70,000 people between the ages of 20, 21 and retirement age of 65. But we had an increase of 10, 15,000 65 years and over. And we had an increase of 10 or 15,000 from 5 to the 19 or the 20. So this might make some believe that we're heading in one direction of a core city of just commercial buildings, some homes, and large apartment buildings for people between 5 and 19 and 65 years and over.
I think you got to nab hard this illusion, which I think it is, that there is some such thing as business and some such thing as labor, and they're in nice, neat Marxist compartments. I think that's baloney. You have businessmen who do a lot in the area of dealing with social problems at night and a lot of their days. Same thing's true of a lot of labor leaders and a lot of labor people in unions. Business organizations are very bad at representing the conscience of the business community. I think we'd all agree about that. There isn't much debate about that. In testimony and in lobbying, businessmen's organizations are way behind the social conscience of businessmen as individuals. And when you find out who's doing things in the community, you find almost always that there's a responsible labor union leader and there's a responsible businessman involved with the clergy and other people that you'd expect to be involved in these matters. I think we just have to keep constantly breaking down the categories into human beings. Who's doing what? Who's dealing with delinquency? Who's with the kids? It isn't the
Yes, I would like to say, though, that you can't say that they're one group. My primary responsibility is still as a businessman to see that our plant is running properly. I think that the labor management, their problem is primarily to see that there are jobs, to go on and negotiate wages properly, and to see that there's fair treatment for those people. And I think that these things are we can work together, that's true. But you've got to be just in your operation, and I think that there are agencies that can perform these things, but I think that we should see as businessmen and as private citizens and as labor leaders and labor management that these agencies that are created are proper and are doing a job. But I think this is where some of the apathy is coming in, that management, for example, business management and even labor management is not morally sensitive to these things, and that's why the difficulty is developing, and we're happy in our own little bailiwick here.
I don't think this is. I'm going to disagree. I think that as an employer, or the president of a company, your main purpose, of course, is the welfare of your company.
Yeah.
Myself, as a labor union, have an obligation to see that the working conditions and wages are paid and the likes of this. But what's happening then, because you don't have the time, you are selecting somebody out of your company. Labor unions are selecting somebody from their ranks.
The patrons of the city include all of us, business, labor, and many other groups. We wish to thank Mr. Roger Kennedy of the Northwest National Bank in St. Paul, David Rowe, State President of the AFL-CIO, Mr. Leonard Lasham, Executive Vice President of the State CIO-AFL, and Mr. Eugene Lench, President of the Minnesota Fence and Iron Works, for exploring with us the question, who are the patrons of the city?